I'm happy to be back. Like I said, this is my third time. How many of you guys have been here now for one of these archaeology seminars in the past? Okay, so how many of you, this is the first time you've been to one of these, and you're like, I don't know if I'm coming to look at a bunch of pictures of rocks, or if this is going to be Indiana Jones? Okay. So some of you, you were freshmen when I first came, you're growing up. We've come a long way. Some of you were juniors and should be gone by now, so let's get it going. That's okay. That's okay. Extra years. I work in a period of 3,000 and 4,000 years, so you take a couple years, that's nothing, right? I'm really happy to be here, and just stepping foot back on campus this morning was refreshing. To see the smiling faces, to only get to spend not even a week here a year, but to come back and be getting hugs and seeing people that, now we're basically family. That's fantastic. You guys are great. What we're going to talk about today, the title is Lions in the Levant, the SAGU expedition to es-Safi, Gath, es-Safi, Israel. What we did this summer is we took our first trip of SAGU students to excavate in Israel. And so we took 2 students, and what I want to do today is talk a little bit about what we did, the actual archaeology that we did, and what that would look like for you guys if you decided to join us. So before I get started, I just want to thank a lot of people who take care of me and keep me in school and pay me. And that's mainly Penn State. That's where I'm finishing up my schooling right now. But I'm also happy to be associated with the University of Kansas this year with the Jewish Studies program, and also now associated with SAGU because we actually taught this for academic credit this summer. So, and at this point, I should really thank Dr. Uglo, Dr. Goodrich. You guys did a lot of work behind the scenes to make this happen, I think, to offer the academic credit. And I really appreciate that because this is the kind of opportunity that I wish I would have had as a student, and to be able to take a trip to another country and to earn credit, that's kind of a lot of liability for the school. So thank you guys for doing all the legwork that you did. We should also thank our director, Professor Aaron Mayer from Bar-Ilan University. Most of the pictures that you'll see in this presentation are the property of the dig. And so we always want to thank him because he lets us do these kinds of things and has allowed SAGU to kind of partner in this. The es-Safi Archaeological Project is focused on the site es-Safi Gath. This is biblical Gath of the Philistines, Goliath's hometown. You know it well from the Bible. And so this is Israel. If you don't have that yet, we need to get that down. A good step for this presentation, but probably your careers, especially if you're thinking about ministry. Jerusalem, and not 45 or 50 minutes away, is es-Safi. And so you can see it here. From its profile, it's a giant hill. And every morning, we walked up and over the spine all the way to the top, to the summit. And Kristen can tell you, it's a hike. And Carson and Julie can tell you it's a hike. But by the end, it feels like nothing. And so this is es-Safi, a giant hill. You can see the white chalk bedrock here. But everything above that line is basically human occupation. And what I mean by this is that city after city was just built one on top of the other. And so all this accumulation above the white is not the hill, but actually city remains. And so that's what's there for us to be able to dig through. The thing about es-Safi that's neat is that it's literally, if you look, it's literally the first hill. The geography of Israel is such that we have a large coastal plain, and we have the mountains, and in between we have this thing we call the Shvela. And that's these gentle rolling hills. And the thing about es-Safi is it's literally the first hill. So if you look this way, this is looking towards the Mediterranean, and on a clear day, we can actually see that silver glint on the horizon. You can see it's completely flat. I always like to think it looks like Kansas, and after moving back to Kansas, I think, yeah, it does. Has a little bit of Kansas to it. But everything coming this way, looking the other direction, are hills, okay? You can see kind of in the background here, the hills start. And if it were really clear, you'd be able to see the mountains being rocky and popping up on the horizon. And this is really fun for us. We had it a couple times this summer. Because it's the first hill, the Israeli army will bring their helicopters and swing into the valleys and do low-flying maneuvers. And so you get this real sense of the geography being on this first hill, looking one direction, it's completely flat, and the other direction are these hills that lead up into Jerusalem. And that'll be important in the biblical stories. This is an old piece of Israeli, basically, spy film that shows the tell from the top, and you can see our different excavation areas spread out. So when we go and we do archaeology, it's not just one spot or like we're going to look for a thing. You know, that's always the thing. People say, well, what are you looking for? Goliath's class ring, because it unlocks the secrets of time. And it's like, no, we're not looking for a thing. We're digging all over the site in these different spots to understand different pieces of the culture. And not just the culture, but how it evolves over time. Down here, we're digging in the lower city and learning about the Philistines in the 9th century and the part of the site that was destroyed by King Hazael that's mentioned in the Bible. Up here, we have everything from the early Bronze Age, which is 2500 BC, all the way up to a Crusader castle. And so we understand this big picture of what the history of the site's doing. Out here, Area C, this is actually a siege trench, and you can kind of see the scar that runs around the city. And that's from this Aramean siege when Hazael came. And so all of these different areas are aimed at understanding the site in a different way. And of course, I said in our area specifically, we had early Bronze Age all the way up to the Crusader. Here I really have just to where we get to biblical stuff. But for SAGU, we really stayed mostly in these periods, from the early Bronze Age to the Iron One. Okay, so SAGU at Safi. How did we get lines in the Levant? And the Levant is just our fancy term for this area, this Eastern Mediterranean coastline. Well, last year around this time, we showed up and we gave some seminars and we said, come up here and sign up. And so we started out with a list of like 30 people ready to go. And then it was a list of 8 people that were ready to go. And then 6 were really sure they were going. And then 4 were positive. And then 2 showed up. So this year I need 200 people on that initial list so we can get 6 people to actually show up. No, but through the Ancient Studies program, we're able to offer these seminars. And let me just say right now, just a little promotion for the Ancient Studies program, because what I saw from the students this summer was nothing short of excellence. Excellence in terms of their work ethic, but also in terms of their knowledge. I work with the Ancient Studies students at Penn State, basically, and now at KU, and I can say without a doubt that the quality of the education that Christian and Joe showed up with and the background knowledge is very easily on par, if not above, what I experience on a daily basis at Penn State. So that's my plug for Ancient Studies. You will never regret understanding the history and the backgrounds of the biblical world. That will never let you down, I can promise you that. Okay, so we did this little recruitment, and we went with the beautiful people. No, that just beautiful people showed up. It just happened that way. No, so we went out and we found our people. There's the picture. So Kristen and Joe are SAGU students. Carson and Julie are members from the community. Sometimes you just need a Texan. And that's, when you're going to do some hard work, you just get Carson. And I got to say, between Joe and Kristen, Carson and Julie, we just had a great time. And I can tell you the Israelis had a great time. They came up to me and said, you know, Carson, his accent's really cool. It's like, what is that? I'm like, that's Texas. And it's like, I'm really proud of myself. I understood it. So this is like Miriam, I think. And so this was our team. What did we do? We spent 4 weeks in Israel. And every day we were digging. You can see here, Kristen is holding a measuring stick. I'm sitting That's basically how it went. They worked while I wrote a lot of things down. 4 weeks in Israel. We spent weekends in Jerusalem or traveling around. And then for our excavation, we focused on 3 things: removal, some rescue work, and some restoration. That'll probably preach. You don't get away from your roots, I guess. And the guys did this all while earning academic credits through SAGU. So this was a really good time. So what we were working on, we're working on Philistines. Okay, we have es-Safi, it's biblical Gath, Goliath, Philistines. We got the bad guys in the Bible. Okay, and that's what we're working on. So for the stuff that we're really talking about, we're talking about this Iron One period, is what archaeologists call it. But this is everything basically from after Judges to probably around the time of Samuel, okay? Here's kind of a map of the historical Philistine settlement. You can see in the green, this would be what we would traditionally associate with Israel when they come into the land after the Exodus. And then the red and the orange is the Philistines. And when you see this and you think that these 2 different people groups come into the land around the same time, it's no wonder that they spend the next few hundred years constantly coming up against each other. Look at the boundary that's right there. And this land happens to be very fertile farming land, okay? Now, I don't know what it looks like from back there, but this is the tell looking toward the east. And right up here under this arrow, you can see a kind of a black rectangle. Those are our tarps. Looking from this direction, probably in this area. I do want to point out right now the big white cliffs here again. And this is this soft chalk, possibly one of the places that es-Safi gets its name. Es-Safi from the Arabic meaning pure or white. And so when you look at the tell, this is one of the first things you see are these giant white cliffs. So this is the area that we worked in. Area F was our home for 4 weeks. Kristen's already getting a little nostalgic. I can see it. And the area we focused on was basically a giant city wall with a bunch of rooms built up against it. And so this city wall is probably built in the early Bronze Age around 2500 BC. So that's 4,500 years old. And it's constantly reused all the way into the biblical period, and probably the very wall that Uzziah is credited with pushing through in Chronicles. Okay, so this is significant. Inside this wall, we have rooms. You can see a room here, another little room here, another here, and that's what we were trying to focus on. So the first thing that we had to do this summer was remove stuff. If you're taking notes on this sermon. So we're gonna remove things in 3 or 4 areas. The first thing that we were focusing on was this mud brick wall. Oh, so here we go again, rescue. We had to rescue this. You can see the erosion starting to go away. This actually is a picture that's 2 years old, and this had dipped all the way up into this other square. This was a mess and almost completely filled in. And then we had to restore. We lost the wall, actually. It's kind of embarrassing. It's 9 feet thick, and we lost it. All the erosion buried what we dug up 6 or 7 years ago, so we had to re-dig it up. Okay, and this is where we ended up, but we'll get to that. Okay, so removal. We had to take out these pieces because one of our big goals is we have this incredible wall, we have this fortification system, but we don't know the big picture. Going into the season, we weren't sure if it was really built around 2500 BC or maybe 1700, and archaeologists care about these things, okay? So we have questions about the fortification system. We also want to go deeper behind this wall to see if we can get more rooms. There's a potential for an archive of texts. So this is something, if you have texts, you begin to reconstruct history. These are things we get excited about. So we want to go deeper, but to do that, we have to get things out of the way. You can see this kind of like tic-tac-toe structure. We leave these, we call them bulks, and these are there basically as a measure of control. So if you see those, perfectly north-south and east-west walls, those aren't walls, those are just dirt that we didn't dig. But every once in a while, we take them out, and when we take them out, we're able to get a bigger exposure and a bigger picture of what we're doing. So this is one of those rooms. I'll point it out. This is this room right here. And a couple years ago, I spent some time talking about this. This was our first room where the Philistines settled at es-Safi. Everything underneath this is Canaanite, and then suddenly the pottery changes. And this is the very first room. But we want to get down into that Canaanite stuff and understand a little bit more about the site. So we have to take out this mud brick wall. A little bit of the pottery. That's probably too dark to see. These will become important. This is very typical Philistine pottery. You can see what is the head of a bird, actually, and this one is just the eye. And that's about the size of your thumbnail. So sometimes even the smallest piece of pottery can tell us exactly what we're digging, and it can be really important. So this is that room again with the pottery. Okay, and this is the reason we had to take out the mud brick wall. It just got ugly. You can see a few bricks up here, but it's really eroded. We had an animal come and dig a giant hole in it. If you can follow this yellow line, you can actually see where the mud brick is different from the dirt around it. And if your eyes can actually make that distinction, I want you to come dig with us because we need people who can see dirt. And it's a skill. Dirt is not just dirt, right, Christian? Right, Carson? Like this is important. So the plan was just to take this out. I turned Joe loose on it with a pickaxe. And then we had a problem. It turned out that this wall was really cool and had a story of its own. When we cut into it, we had this perfectly preserved cross-section of the mud bricks. And everybody that came, I mean, these famous archaeologists who were 60 and 70 years old came down, and the first thing they said, wow, look at those bricks. And so these are SAGU's bricks. This is your lasting contribution to archaeology, some mud bricks. I probably could have brought a piece of that back. No, and what we noticed, though, as we cut this away, is that inside what we thought was one wall was a stone foundation. And so it was like, we went from being ready to tear this thing out to having something that we had to slow down and figure out the story. Okay, and here comes another test. So you can see, here's our mud bricks, here's that stone foundation, and here's the old mud brick wall. And then there's the soil that it's laid on top of. Okay, can you kind of see that? You guys that are close enough to the front. So what happens is we have this picture over here, and we have to try to reconstruct what happened to our wall. And if you could see that before I put the lines up, you also need to come. If you could see that before, I'll pay for you to come. This is a tricky puzzle. So what we actually have here is a wall that was built and then scraped off. This was all mud brick material. Kristen spent plenty of time digging through it. It's crumbly mud brick. So it was scraped off. They built a stone foundation, and you can see this rock sits about at the level of the stone foundation. And then they built this new mud brick superstructure. Then over time, there's some accumulation and, dirt piles against the wall. And then eventually, the wall falls over. And this was, again, another huge collection of just decayed mud brick. And then, you get topsoil that buries it. So this is just one piece of the puzzle, and this is the kind of stuff that we have to figure out as we go. We don't just get to go and dig till we hit the Ark of the Covenant, and it's like, oh, look, I found something gold, we should stop. No, we have to, you have to take time, and you have to answer the questions, because this is like CSI, but 3,000 years old. As soon as you take it away, it's gone forever. What's the saying? The only difference between science and messing around is writing it down. I mean, that's true. Okay? So we have to write everything down and document it. Okay. As we were removing things, we had another one of these bulks that we wanted to take out. So we started taking this away just to expose the top of the wall. And this was fun because, anytime you're taking out big chunks of topsoil, there's just the potential for all sorts of crazy things to come up. We've pulled inscriptions out, pieces of alabaster vessels, scarabs, the little Egyptian beetle-looking things with hieroglyphics on them. So cool stuff comes out. This did not. That did not come out of the topsoil. But what I want you to see is this guy over here. See that bird? This is very typical Iron One Philistine pottery. We call it bichrome because it has black and red paint on it. So I want you to see this bird, but then see the shape of this vessel. Because what SAGU did, and here's another bird actually on that shape of vessel, what SAGU did this summer is actually recovered the best example of this kind of bird on this vessel that es-Safi has found yet. So that's the official picture. This is what happens when you find stuff and you just set it on a rock and take a picture with your cell phone. And then you take it to the lab and you do the real thing with a scale. But this is the best one we found yet. And this is classic Philistine art. And you can see just the beak of the bird, how finely it's laid. And for those guys that were there, this one was really cool because the paint was just so well applied. It looked like somebody almost put on like a Sharpie line in some spots. Like it was that dark. So this was really cool because SAGU got to be all over the blog. You know, the web page was linked, and it was like, this is what SAGU did. We found the best piece of Philistine art in this style on one of these vessels at the site. And there's Joe. He found it. With his model-like gaze, he just wills the pottery to come out of the earth. Probably had his headphones in because he was tired of listening to me tell him to clean more. So, but you can also see, this is another great view, not Joe, but of the terrain going flat backwards towards the Mediterranean. Okay, so we took out the mud brick wall, we took out this bulk, and then we had this last bulk that we needed to remove. And this one was interesting because we knew we had this wall that was running into it. And we knew we had the city wall, and we had a pretty good idea that they were going to run into each other. And so you always go into it having your plans of how this is going to work out. What we weren't really planning for was the fact that inside the wall here, we were probably going to run into as many things as we did. Here you can see our fearless leader, Jeff, standing at it while it's still basically a big hump of dirt. You can see the stone wall. Okay, so stones right there are these stones right here. And this wall actually had like an adobe superstructure. Not true mud brick, not stones, but just like a messy mud that had rocks and pieces of pottery in it. And you can actually see that's what's behind them. So our goal when we excavated this was try to leave that adobe superstructure because it's so unique, but also because if there's anything on the other side of that wall, we wanted to catch it, you know, in situ, leaning up against the wall. And so this is where we ended up. You can actually see there's the superstructure we left. Here's what we didn't plan to do, which was layer after layer of packed earth floors. And Julie labored away on these, and Kristen and Teva, they just floor after floor. I think we had 3 or 4 of them. And the next one is like first day we'll start. We've got 3 or 4 more to go through. So these are all iron one surfaces. This is good Philistine house that Julie was working on. And there's our wall. And what was fun about this is you can see, again, here's an eye test. That hunk of dirt at the end is different from everything else. What that actually is the original mud bricks of the city wall. And so you can see again here, here's the floor. You can see rocks are setting on it. That's how we know we have a surface. In the back, you can see other floors that we went through already. And then right here, you see this big hunk that's different, and that's the mud bricks again. Looking at it from the top. Julie, remind me to show this to you later because we found something we didn't know we found. It happens. Here's looking into the rooms. So we have the big room here with the old mud brick wall that we were taking out. And then we have these new rooms. And so as we go down, we don't know what we're going to find. On this side of the wall, when they dug this, in these lower levels, they were finding restorable pottery. Restorable Philistine pots that they took back to the lab and they glued back together. So we're really hoping that as we get down through these next layers, we're going to have the same thing on this side. And again, you can see the room. So the problem with these floors, you can see that's a really hard packed surface, right? The problem is if it wasn't destroyed, if the house wasn't destroyed, we don't find a lot on the floors. Because look at this floor. It's clean, right? you keep your floor swept. So if it's not something that's destroyed at the very end, chances are you're just going to find a really clean floor. But sometimes you get lucky, and you find things pressed into that floor material. And so what this was that's a hint. This is a bead made out of faience, and it was really tiny. And we were able to get it out, and we got it in a bag, and we started the paperwork on it. Mistakes were made. This is something that you should know about archaeology. We don't blame people, typically. We would never say, we found a bead and Dr. Goodrich smashed it because he was too excited. We would just say a bead was recovered, mistakes were made, and the bead was not salvaged or something like that. I don't remember how I wrote it in the report, but mistakes were made is definitely in there. So that's our passive way of, absolving people from guilt. I don't know if it was a SAGU person. That wouldn't be fair since there's only 2 of them that were on the trip. So that was one thing that was pressed into this floor. We didn't recover it, but we know there's beads, so it's not the end of the world, okay? And this is the best SAGU facepalm picture possible. Okay. So that's kind of where we ended up. So that was the removal of all those pieces. The next thing that we had to do was some rescuing. And I told you before, this is because we had a lot of erosion that was happening. And we wanted to clean all of this up, and we thought this will be real easy. We'll just set a string, shave it flat down, no problems. And you can see we actually did that. So before, we're waving all over the place, and now that same line is pretty straight. That's really good work. And the reason that's important is because we need to be able to see these flat surfaces to do exactly what I was describing to you earlier, how we see the dirt. Take a look at this one, because that's what it looks like in publication. So we have to be able to get these as flat and smooth as possible so we can actually draw and graphically record what we've excavated. Okay, so that's part of this rescue operation, is to basically save these bulks before the erosion destroys them. So in the process of cleaning this up, we knew we had a couple rocks poking out, but as we started to trim this line that we set, and we were literally only taking away, at the most in some spots, a foot. And as we start to cut back, we get big pieces of pottery, and then we get this cool scraper thing. It basically looks like a pumice submarine. And so it's got a hole drilled through the middle so you can hang it on a rope. And this is just like a scraper. I mean, girls, you could do your feet with it. We were also walking around like rubbing each other's arms because we're covered in dirt. And it's like, look, it can be smooth. And so, we're just trying to cut this back a little bit. And then all of a sudden we've got pottery and we've got pumice and then we've got a metal blade. And Carson was just on a roll. So, sorry for you guys that are in the back. Down here, this brown stick is actually, it's got little highlights of green. This is a bronze blade. The problem in the field is we can't actually start to chip all this away or we'll start to destroy it. So we have to let the conservation people actually clean this up. But that's the first metal blade that I've ever had come up while I've been digging at es-Safi. So this was really cool that SAGU got to be a part of it. And then Carson hit the jackpot. He just couldn't stop making paperwork for me. And so in that cleaning up, we found this gal, and this is a Sekhmet figurine. Sekhmet being an Egyptian warrior goddess. You'll notice something important is missing. She doesn't have a head, which is really too bad because as a lioness, as this warrior goddess, she would have had like a kind of lion tiger head. It would have been really cool. So there are a couple more angles of that. And this thing was so small, but it's bright green. It's made out of faience, which is like a glass paste, kind of. Super fragile. The same stuff that bead was made out of. So we'd already had some mistakes that were made with the bead. I was freaking out about this. I was like, we're not going to blow this one up. And so here I am doing my best History Channel, like trying to keep a straight face, faking it for the camera. And really, that's what I'm thinking on the inside. So I love this picture because it actually looks like my head is sitting on top. So business, party. But that was something that was really cool. This faience figurine, really proud of the work we did there. And that possibly came from the levels that we were associating with the earliest Philistine house. So it's kind of cool. Why are they holding on to this Egyptian little amulet? Questions to ask, things to figure out. And then the last piece really that we worked on was restoration. I told you that we lost our wall. It happens. But we knew it was there. Nobody stole it. And so a huge part of this was to get this signature picture this year. We really wanted to have this fortification system and expose it in a way that it just really popped. And so we decided that in addition to uncovering these pieces, we were going to go back and get the inside of the wall line so that we would have it when we start digging these rooms next summer. And so you can see we were actually successful in that. We've got a little bit of a turn here in the wall. The guys uncovered some stuff that I wish they wouldn't have, because now we still don't know what's going on. But we've got the inside of the wall, and then we rescued all of these that were buried from before. So we can start asking questions and hopefully answering some questions about how all of this architecture relates. But this is what it looks like. You know, you see this and you're like, oh, you had to dig out some dirt. I bet that was really hard. Well, we hadn't actually excavated this square since 2007. And in Israel, it's not always dry and desert looking like this. It's a beautiful country that has these incredible rains. The tell is just this bright green mound covered in flowers in the spring. The problem is that if it rains every year since 2007 and just keeps washing stuff in and weeds keep growing, that's a lot of work to clean up. And so that's what we do. You can see these are giant thorn bushes. I mean, it's like battle going in, and you know it's going to be bad, but you do it. And of course, the shade cloth normally isn't up when we start this work. But that's the kind of rehabilitation and restoration work. This archaeology thing is a total process. You know, like I said, it's not we go when we find Goliath's class ring and then run to the museum. There's a lot of pieces that go into it. And so once you get it clean, I mean, before, after, people come and look at it because this wall is something. And we had the best of the best in Israel coming and checking out this wall. Here you can see Joe and Kristen, and me, I guess, standing in front of the wall. And there you can see just how big this thing is running up through the background. You know, they took out the pieces here, and now we have that good view of the wall going all the way up. Ooh, animation. Okay, so again, we just took as many cool pictures of the wall as we could this summer because that was one of the goals, is to really document this. You can see the wall running all the way up to the top. You can see this outset. This is going to be important in a second. This is another dark one. I was taking these before the sun came up, which we do. So if you want to come dig with us, you'll have to wake up. More, also the outset, keep that in mind. Okay, the reason this is important is because, like I said, we're trying to figure out this fortification system. If you've got a big city, you want to understand how it's working. So these guys, Bliss and McAllister, dug at es-Safi over 100 years ago. British guys show up, make a mess of the site. But while they were there, they document a bunch of pieces of walls that they saw, city walls. And so in Area F, we're digging up at the top of the tell, and we've always known that they had this wall fragment that they called B. Said, oh, we're probably on the same wall that is associated with their B. Last summer, something funny happened, and that was this. On the other side of the tell, we found another giant wall. And where this actually happens to be is right in the area of Bliss and McAllister's Wall G. And you'll notice that I just pointed out the outset of the wall where we're at. Look at how they've recorded this whole wall with outsets. And you'll see here the outset in Area P, and then what's probably another piece of one over here. And so the cool thing about the Area P wall is that it's big. We didn't get to do this with our wall yet. There's Brian. He's actually a graduate of Central Bible College. and he's now working on a master's in Fort Worth at Southwest Baptist Theological Seminary. So we got another archaeologist local, and he excavated this summer. Look how deep this thing got. This is Andrew. Andrew's over 6 feet tall. He's a big, tall Canadian, and I don't hold being tall against him. Look at how tall that wall got. And so this is what happens in the early Bronze Age. You build giant stone walls to protect your city. Everything that came out of this hole was only early Bronze Age pottery. And so now we're starting to think that our wall and the Area P wall are probably a part of the same fortification system. And so that's something that every day as we walked back and forth to breakfast, I think we stopped and we just thought about it, because we're both working on walls. They're both really big walls. And every day it was like a little piece of the puzzle started to come together. Carson would stop and talk. It was a lot of fun. SAGU played a big role in putting together a piece of Tel es-Safi's history. And so you saw how big that hole was in Area P. This summer, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take this piece and we're going to kick it off the cliff. I think we're going to put the guys from Evangel there because Evangel. But what we're going to do is we're going to kick this off the cliff and we're going to see how big the wall is. And we're going to try to understand this little outset and also this little piece up here and see if it's not another outset. Okay, so that's kind of what we've done so far, and that's kind of where we're going next summer. We've basically been told if we get the crew, we can pick what we work on down there. So in the last couple minutes, I want to talk about what it's like to dig. What can you expect if you come with us and, take a stab at archaeology? This is a picture of a sunrise. I can't promise you a sunrise like this every day. This probably only happens like 3 or 4 days out of the week. So this is actually, and these colors are not popping on the projector, but this is looking over the valley of Elah, and it's beautiful. I mean, the people that were there can tell you that you just stop, and you're breathless. Mostly because you're climbing a giant hill, but also because just to sit there and soak in these colors with the fog and the clouds, just overlooking this fertile land, it's really amazing. So you'd think that archaeology is serious business. We're constantly documenting things. This is actually a weekly argument we call the draft, where all the new volunteers come and we divide out who's going to be on what team. And so the supervisors are saying, I need 6 people. You gave me all tiny people last week. I need big guys. He plays football. I want him. So there are serious moments, but we have a lot of fun. You're digging side by side with Israelis sometime. Like I said, the Israelis have as much fun with us as we do with them. This is Yoel and Renana. Yoel did not stop singing, and he was a horrible singer. I hope he never sees this. Yoel, I love you. Just singing and loud and had this Israeli radio voice. It's fantastic. And Jeff, our fearless leader, he's a professor at BYU. But as you can see, he hangs out with George Wood. So, and that's not Photoshopped. That's from last week. Not a bad guy to know. Jeff keeps it fun. We're the only area that has a pirate flag. This is our mascot, and I've been told that there needs to be a Texas flag up there. We need enough people to make that happen. But as you dig with us, we're the ones that have to hike all the way across the Tell. Everybody else doesn't. And so we kind of develop this mentality. We kind of embody the pirate spirit after 4 weeks of walking over a giant hill. We'll teach you to excavate. You don't have to show up with any skills. Kristen and Joe didn't show up with, a degree in archaeology. They just showed up wanting to learn. And so we put them in there. Sometimes mistakes get made. Sometimes you crush a bead or break a pot or smack a giant altar with a pickaxe. It only took a small chip out. And that wasn't me. That was someone else from another country. Far, far away. But the giant Philistine altar has a chip out of it thanks to some custom work done by a pickaxe. But we'll teach you to dig. And that's the thing. It's not worth doing if we're not having fun. So we'll come and we'll teach you to dig, and you're going to have fun doing, and you might even find stuff. Here's some stuff in Area D. This is the surface, and you can see that they're, not even 3 feet down, and they're finding whole pots. So it's awesome. 2 summers ago, I was digging in an area, and I told a guy, I want to dig in this new spot. I think I'm going to find some pots. And he goes, you're not going to find pots. We already found them all. We came down on the floor of a house and had 6 whole pots. And this summer I got to see it glued back together in the lab. So we find stuff. It's so cool. You're going to work. This might be the one day that Kristen got dirty. But probably not. We worked hard. But in the afternoons, we do get to be in the shade. We only work till 1 o'clock. Then we go home, we have lunch, we wash some pottery, just a little bit. And then we read it. You can see here the supervisors are sorting through the pottery pieces in a tray. And they basically go through and say, this is from the Iron Age, this is from the Bronze Age. And so there's a chance to watch that. And as you watch that, you'll start to get a feel for what this is. I mean, you'll spend weeks basically handling stuff that's 3,000 years old. Which sounds cool now, but by the end you're going to be like, that's a 3,000-year-old piece of pottery, and meh. So I'm just, you will be so familiar with this stuff. It's almost unreal sometimes. You think, when did this become normal? That carrying around, a grocery bag full of 4,000-year-old pottery is like my regular thing. Okay, so we'll teach you a little bit about the pottery. We'll teach you to do paperwork. Kristen comes back this summer, she's going to be doing paperwork because I don't want to. She was drawing top plans this summer. She knows how to run all the numbers. She knows how to shoot the elevations. She didn't know any of that when she showed up, and that stuff, she's ready to go. We'll teach you to do our new computer database. So we go from all these paper things in the field to punching it in. The Australian team basically had an army because they brought like 40 people this summer. So they did a lot of work, which was even more work to plug into the computer. But they had full-time data entry people. But we'll teach you how to link everything in the database. And every once in a while, we'll do something silly. This was a stunt we pulled. We were trying to test a theory to see if we could see a signal fire between es-Safi and SAGU. Again... So you can see our signal fire. I think people in Texas cook on fires bigger than this. It was sad, and you couldn't see it, and it was already too light out. But you'll notice that people are dressed in Philistine costumes with spears and swords, and our director, Aaron Mayer, is here on a cell phone calling the other site to see if they could see our signal. So it's like the classic, 3,000-year-old version of "Can You Hear Me Now?" That's can you see it now? And it's like, this is lost on people there. And this was fun because this got coverage in all the Israeli newspapers, which actually have an international run. And so Kristen snuck into the back of a picture. That was going. The best part of this is that Teva is not even in costume. She's just holding. That's how she looked every day, and she's just holding a spear, a foam spear. And so she's a sweetheart. She's an EMT and took care of us when we got hurt, bee stings and such. On the weekends, we'll take you to Jerusalem. The best part of this is just being able to run around Jerusalem, and it kind of becomes your neighborhood. I would turn Kristen and Joe loose, and I'd trust them to get to the bus station or wherever we're going. And that's what, after 4 weeks, that's perfectly fine. Stuff like this becomes normal. It's surreal. This summer, we were there during Ramadan, which was just incredible. It was a different experience. We lost out on some of the better food, but that's okay. Here we are, getting falafel for about $2, and this guy's not really happy. Mistakes were made. But to wander around East Jerusalem, to get food, to make friends, to get to know the shopkeepers, these are all things that we can do. Going into the restaurants where, you're the only person that looks like you, but the people just welcome you with open arms. It's a lot of fun. We'll take anybody. Like I said, you don't need to know. You don't need to know what you're doing. This is Shai. He's one of our former supervisor's son, and he came out and played with us, played in the dirt. I've had success training my own archaeologist. This is my daughter, Neva, and you can see early Bronze Age, wavy ledge handle. This is when she was 2 weeks old. And clearly her mother was sleeping. Philistine pottery. She's dreaming about the Philistines. But she's come a long way because now she handles a trowel, and you can see she already sees the dirt. She can draw that for me. So we really want you guys to come join us. This is the most fun you can have. Like I said, we were able to do academic credits for people last summer, and I think we're looking forward to exploring that again for this summer. I give you permission right now to get out your phone and go like this on Facebook, because you'll see the blog posts, you'll see the information about scholarships, you'll see just the updates that are coming from the project. And then if you want to email me to get more information as things develop, ewelch@sagu.edu. So we would love to have you. This summer was such a success. I can tell you the people at Bar-Ilan University were impressed with our students, and they're very excited to have us back with even more people this summer. So join us. Thank you.